Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done by Diggity. Up right in corner we got Worst, starting as the orange Protoss, although it kind of looks blue with that beta upgrade thing. Bottom right in corner we got Octzerg, starting as the green. We'll say it's the light green Zerg. This is going to be on BlitzY. If you guys are unfamiliar with that map, it's been pretty interesting, especially in the previous season of ASL. Trying to think, I think they have it in this season of ASL. Anyway, I'll have to double check that. They've got a bunch of new maps, and my brain just kind of watches the game. It doesn't like, oh yeah, these are the map, yeah, because I'm not casting them. Anyway, natural expansion down here, the classic Zerg eggs to make it a little bit smaller. Bottom left-hand corner is an expansion that you can kind of sneak out towards. You have a mineral only on kind of an open flat land, but kind of the interesting aspect of this map is you have this long, narrow corridor right here. That tends to be the engagement point across the board, and then you have this here, which is the an island basically to kind of, so you have like minerals and gas available in between here, and it's a two-player map, and you got kind of also this base at the 9 o'clock location with another 5,000 gas in between. Anyway, from my understanding, this is a very, very tough map for Zerg. And also Octzerg tends not to perform very well against Protoss, so it should be a tough map for him. By the way, if you guys are wondering, the ping should be decent. I don't think there's going to be a lot of ping problems between these guys. Worst, a very strong Romanian Protoss tends to be in Gosu League. I would not be shocked if he ended up in BSL Pro League one of these seasons. Octzerg tends to peak between Gosu and Pro League himself. Looks like Octzerg trying to make his way to, actually, so I'm a little bit shocked. So he is going to go ahead and fold into a 12 pool. Opted to not go for the 9 pool. A lot of Zerg have been doing that lately, because especially on two-player maps, because of this precise sort of harassment. In the meantime, we do have a Forge First opener from Worst top right. It looks like the drone is making its way out, was making its way out, as though it's going after additional base. That probe kind of getting dragged out that direction. Looks like he's just going to wait on the spawning pool instead, now sending out. So just trying to occupy this drone, but this is going to result in a very, very late natural expansion. Comparatively, are we going to see a faster gas take as a result, or a quick move to third? So anyway, point being, later natural expansion, it looks like there's going to be about a 225 gas, which opens up potentially the possibility of Mutalist play. Ooh, probe getting absolutely lambasted right there, and that's right. So let's see if it's just 2 Zerglings as a result. Looks like it is going to be the full 6. Actually off the 12 pool. In the meantime, Nexus and Photon Cannon warping in. Worst can easily do that, especially at distance here, because of initial harassment, and that it was and also recognizing it was a 12 pool. Octzerg going to go ahead and fill in the drones. But yeah, really not the economic start Octzerg was looking for, but I'm wondering if he's going to try to turn this into, actually just dashing with the Zerglings out to the front. Overlord sitting, doesn't have eyes currently. That a second photon cannon getting dropped, seeing those Zerglings making the way out. There is a gateway in the way, so this is a pretty, I don't see the Zerglings being able to get through and take down a cannon or wipe this out, especially if the probe moves a little bit forward to go ahead and plug at least one of the gaps. But there is a possibility of a run by. Maybe it looks like Octzerg gonna go ahead and not test that front, especially never mind, gonna go now run in. So yeah, you can't get those cannons, but what you can do is you can sneak usually 2 Zerglings. Looks like just a Zergling. If he had just gone straight, he probably would have gotten the 2 Zerglings in before that second cannon was up. But in the meantime, at least has a Zergling to scout, but lost. That's a lot of early investment that's not going to go. So kind of a rough start here for Octzerg. Cybernetics core warping in at the main. We have initial Zealot being produced as well. Just 1 gas right this second, by the way. And we are seeing a quick tech to layer. So wouldn't be surprised to see maybe even 2 hatching Mutalisk out of this. And did the probe, I think the probe must have been in the base. Should have paid attention to that. The probe, I think, was in the base to go ahead and spot this. But I think Octzerg going to go for kind of a old school classic in 2 hatch Mutalisk versus Protoss, which I haven't seen in quite some time. No third hatchery as of yet. So dropping the Spire right now. And let's see if if Worst is going to be able to have the response to it. It looks like he is getting that Stargate. But the thing is, you don't just need the Stargate. You need the Stargate and you need cannons in the main. And one of the things with 2 hatch Mutalisk is it comes out at you pretty rapidly. Zergling almost getting the probe kill. Probe sneaking away a ways away. But basically what ends up happening is because it's 2 hatch Mutalisk, Zergling taking down to 2 health, still staying alive in space of this. +1 weapons is being upgraded. That'll help a bit. But the thing is the look, the Zergling finally taken care of. And a lot of additional Zerglings being produced, going to be able to swarm that Zealot. So Worst not getting any information here. This could be a potential bust situation as well. If the Zerglings and the Mutalisks engage at the natural expansion, there is a possibility that the cannons get... Oh, never mind. Octzerg not going to wait and just going to try to engage and clear out those probes. And maybe you wanted to push in, get some additional information. Nice hold there from Worst. This is just Octzerg's style, by the way. Very, very aggressive, very, very off-tempo. And Worst recognizing the threat of the Mutalisk play and also seeing a lot of these Zerglings on the ground. So just dropping a defensive cannon that should make things a little bit more defendable. He will have to draw that initial... well, actually, are there no Mutalisks being built? Huh. So Scourge instead, we're seeing this is unusual. So with 2 hatch, the Zerglings got nothing. And maybe because they got nothing, Octzerg, despite going 2 hatch, just getting a quick armor upgrade and going for a 3rd base rather than going for Mutalisks. Maybe he wanted to make sure the Zerglings got into the main where he could check whether there was a cannon in position or not before he went for any sort of dedication. But as a result of this, his economy not going to be where it would be otherwise as far as a standard 4 hatch or something along those lines. Zerglings trying to careen their way in. Scourge wanting to connect on at least one of those Corsair. And the Zerglings also testing the front. Looks like that's going to hold. Scourge not getting anything, but they're at least going to get some scouting information, see that +1 upgrading, and also see that Citadel of Adun for the Zealot leg speed. Not a lot of Zealots out as of yet for Worst, and also getting a defensive cannon out the natural. 4th hatchery now dropping. This is all coming a bit later, though. Overall, the +1 weapons will definitely help versus the Scourge. Should there be more play for the air battle, it makes them a little bit stronger against that +1 where they can land. And now we're seeing the Mutalisks constructed a bit on delay with a hatchery and an evolution chamber on the front. Kind of a stagger. And I think what Octzerg is hoping for here is to exactly this situation is to be able to find one Corsair down, is be able to wipe out Corsair in the open field, dwindle their numbers, and then have an overwhelming Mutalisk force that can potentially either rampage the natural or the main. And on top of that, with this timing, you'll be able to have the Mutalisks out in play where you can deal with the initial Zealots. And having fewer Corsairs to open things up on all the fronts is definitely a benefit. 2 additional gateway. So Worst going just kind of with what I would say is the safe Bishu-ish play, but it's usually you're not building Dark Templar at this stage. You're more going for Archons and a gateway flood up to usually... he's playing a little bit light on gateways right this second. We'll see if he tacks on a couple additional in the space of this. Isn't going for the 730 timing as far as everything that was in the midst of this. We are seeing more Mutalisks being constructed, by the way. A defensive Sun Colony or 2, which suggests this might be more aggressive than usual. 3rd hatchery up as well. So the 3rd hatchery isn't going to have... So I guess that's going to have to be defended with Mutalisks alone. A few Zealots out in the front, but it's going to be just off 3 gateway, which is more of a move towards getting the High Templar out a little bit earlier and playing a little bit more aggressive with the Zealot High Templar as far as flooding their way out. But here come the Mutalisks with the Scourge. They're going to make an attempted dive on the main. I kind of like Zerg doing this sort of stuff to keep opponents on their toes these days. This is definitely something Octzerg does, which makes him such a dangerous opponent. Is going to see, first of all, the gateway count. We do have these Corsair in the background, but they're getting pushed back. They do have +1 weapons, and now you can see a lot of damage done on the main line. 2 Corsairs wiped out, and the Corsairs have to flee back to the main. And now with that Mutalisk switch, some great information denial. Octzerg completely rampaging the main. By the way, this is what Zerg used to do in the prior meta, which was so scary until, and kind of the attempted counter of it was Bisu build with Corsair. And unfortunately, the Corsair is getting picked off as they're spawning. We do have High Templar, and these gateways are going to be very, very vulnerable as well. Mutalisk able to wipe out the rest of the Corsairs, and this might be just dead tech here in the main. Photon Cannon dropping on the gateways to try to provide some defense, but while that was happening, we got a DT at the 3rd. We had some Zealots that made their way into the main. It looks like they just straight up ran by the Sunken Colonies to try to buy some time, and I missed a bunch of drones getting murdered in the space of this. So basically, when the Mutalisks are away, should have paid more attention. Octzerg able to just decimate the worker line and get that 3rd base. So now it's going to be 2 bases versus 1. And a pretty good situation actually for Worst, because 2 bases versus 1 is where you kind of want to be as Protoss. An Archon was able to morph underneath. That's definitely thinning the herd and damaging what's left. Unfortunately, the Stargate has been wiped out. but the Archon should be able to escort the rest out. The Zerglings continuing to chase around. We're going to see I presume a redrop of the hatchery, but in the meantime, Octzerg is going to have to spend some time rebuilding that drone count, that worker count, to get it healthy again. But that was the entirety of Wurst's army, it seems like, that pressed out in the field. If he can get a second Archon up, he might want to go ahead and press and move out in the field and grab what could be a potentially vulnerable third to try to defend that against Mutalisks out in the field. He might want to get another Stargate down to get the Corsairs back in field. Octzerg trying to slow down the economy, microing against the cannons. And because they were weakened earlier, eating a little bit of Psystorm as well, just down to 3 Mutalisks. And that's actually going to clean up the Mutalisks that were left. I'm not sure if I like that play from Octzerg or not, because now Wurst has the single Mutalisk here on the field. Now Octzerg has the option with Zealots that are out in the field to maybe get them out on the map. And especially if +1 weapons is finished, which I believe it is, yeah, they'll perform very, very well against the Zerglings. So Wurst rebuilding the Nexus at the main. Once this Nexus gets up, if it's 2 bases versus 2 at that standpoint, Wurst will theoretically be ahead. He's actually not in a great worker situation, though. Usually you want to be far ahead of your Zerg opponent as far as flat workers. He's getting more Mutalisks in the air. He has Scourge as well. I'm not sure the Scourge are necessary. I think you just presumed another Stargate would be out there. Instead, it's just going to be cannons and the Archons on defense. Another slew of Mutalisks could create some disruption at the main, depending on micro. They would have to be perfect micro from Octzerg. The Mutalisk getting engaged by a single Mutalisk out in the field. It looks like some Zerglings just running around the map, making sure a third hasn't been grabbed in the space of this, which is, again, a real threat in the midst of everything. Octzerg still hasn't grabbed a third base. He has the supply lead, however, in the midst of this. But he needs to make something happen with that supply lead, because Protoss eventually does outscale just in having Archons and Psystorm and other things off 2 bases. We also have a couple Dark Templar queued up. I don't think we have Overlord. Do we even have... I don't think we have Overlord speed finished as of yet. Well, I'll get back to you on that. Looks like the Mule's going to regather and go for another attack, potentially on the main. We have 2 cannons defending the lower gateways. We have an Archon that does have nearly full shield. Might want to morph another Archon or drop some Psystorm to help deal with it. But Wurst is going to have... Oh, and look at this. A sneaky base top right. Octzerg making his way up. He's already peeled off a cannon. He's probably going to pick off a High Templar in the space of it. It's taking a lot of time for the Archon to make his way back up to the high ground. 2 additional gateways dropped in the space of this. So 2 cannons down, a single High Templar. Psystorm, unfortunately, on top of the Archon as well. Able to catch a lot of those Mutalisks, though. And I'm not sure... going to be able to get a probe. Octzerg holding here, actually, with this, and this Dark Templar going ahead and finding nothing at the third. So unfortunately, from Wurst's point of view, he might be thinking, okay, I'm all right here. Overlord, slow Overlord able to find that Dark Templar, by the way. Let's see if that Dark Templar is able to make his way. Top left, very little health left on him. Drone's waiting, by the way, for that hatchery to finish, so already transferred to that base. Main backup, 4th cannon drop because of the 2nd Mutalisk array. The Archon sitting, I like the Archon sitting in no man's land, basically waiting. The one thing about Mules versus Archon is Mules are just so mobile. So mobile. High Templar trying to make their way down to provide some Psystorm to get the Mutalisks away. You have some other Zerglings scrambling around, just making sure that Wurst hasn't gone for a third base. Wurst, again, just kind of going for macro passivity, getting Maelstrom upgraded so we can get a Dark Archon to help deal with that air, and going double Stargate as far as the follow-up, a very delayed double Stargate, however. And he's got 6 gateways, double Stargate, a huge amount of Zealots. But this is 3 bases now up. So Octzerg in a pretty okay situation. Supply counts are even. Theoretically, that puts and also worker counts are dangerously close, which means Octzerg is actually in a pretty decent situation. Wurst losing another cannon on that back line. High Templar looking for a Psystorm, whiffing with that initial Psystorm. That's going to be the end of that High Templar's life. And the Archon, not on the map, actually. Archon taking a while to get in position. Again, they're slow and they're hard to deal with. This is where Maelstrom can be a big benefit as far as a mix-in, but a lot of Psystorm getting drained, and I'm sure that's leaving Wurst feeling like he's not in a great position to go ahead and move out and grab an additional base. Evolution Chamber's been sitting here this entire time. We're seeing a Tech to Hive off 3 bases, by the way. We have +1 Carapace, I presume +2, sorry, I don't see any additional Carapace upgrades. The +1 will help against the +1 weapon, so Zerglings aren't going to be as ineffectual, but once that Hive is complete and we see the Adrenal upgrades, so Zerglings become much more dangerous again. And Wurst still hasn't grabbed a third, although it's kind of interesting because he's been over mining on his natural expansion, so he's not going to have that usual 17-minute. Unfortunately, exposing some zealots, he was making his way towards that third, exposing the zealots to the Mutalisks, so the Mutalisks getting a lot of damage done. Octzerg doing a great job of kind of abusing the better mobility of the Zerg army. Archon yeah, you can see how hard it is for Archons to micro out there. It's very, very difficult to mark. There is a slight range advantage of Mutalisks versus Archon, and that Archon now down to 35 health. So we're just being pushed back into the main. These High Templar just huddled around that cannon as though it was a campfire, and this was the darkest night here. We saw that upgrade of Maelstrom, but I don't see Dark Templar out in the field. I'm also not sure what I presume that Dark Templar got picked up, and now Octzerg grabbing that bottom right-hand base. But the Corsair fleet is starting to regrow here. And if we still got a lot of Zealots on the ground, there is a potential return situation here where the Mutalist force gets wiped out, the Overlords get wiped out, and the Zealots are able to reign supreme. Zealots making their way top left. It looks like they're going to get engaged. Worst, unfortunately, has very, very little information right here. Complete dark map on his side. That Archon doesn't have a lot of health, and Octzerg is just taking the entirety of the ground map in the meantime. I wonder if maybe a robotics drop to the 3 o'clock and some Archons underneath might provide some help with the Corsair support. Are the Corsairs going to start moving out here? So we got 6 Corsairs, which is a pretty strong army. Level 2 armor to help with, I presume, to help with the Templar more than anything. This base almost mined out. So it's going to be 1 base versus what looks like 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. Zealots marching out. They're going to fight versus Zerglings. That's going to pull. The Mutalisks actually not retreating to deal with this Zealot force, maybe because they see the Corsair nearby. Worst, can grab a third and assault an additional base in the space of this. The High Templar being left and stranded, though, a little bit back. We have some more Mutalisks making the way. They're going to go underneath and potentially pick off this probe. The Zealots, also, it's hard for them to march through here. It's very, very slow going. So we got a Mutalist force here. We got another Mutalist force here. And most of Worst's army is making its way towards the natural expansion where you got all sorts of sunken colonies and Zerglings. The Psystorm will help, but this is enough of a Sim City, especially with the larva coincidentally blocking this small gap, that I don't know that there's going to be much of a threat. Unfortunately for Worst, he doesn't know about the, well, he's going to find out in a second, and he might want to pivot, at which point it's going to be difficult for Octzerg to deal with the Zealots that are attacking. A single Zergling, by the way, attacking that base. But now the Zealots repositioning, the drones just moving up. He's like, okay, forget that. Let's just move up to the 9 o'clock. The Corsair are making the way across the base. Guardians morphed. They missed that. So we got Guardians morphed at both locations. Not going to get a lot else aside from cannons here at the natural expansion, but Guardians making the way into the main. And some Psystorm ready? No, we do not have Psystorm ready. The Corsair is going to be able to completely wipe out everything there. It looks like Zealots have wiped out bottom left. They can actually march up to the 9. They're being led all the way up to top left, but there's a whole bunch of sunken colonies there as well, as far as a pure defense. It looks like the Guardians are going to be able to get a little bit of tech. I think they got some High Templar. Worst actually in the red, lost some pylons. They're going to get cleaned up. The Scourge able to at least land. No, never mind. They got wiped out via the splash damage fairly rapidly. So everything getting wiped out. Zerglings now streaming to the natural expansion now that there's no cannons there to help defend. Forge is going to drop. That cannon's going to drop. Psystorm trying to provide some support, and Octzerg is going to be able to flood into the main with the Zerglings. And Corsairs, unfortunately, do not attack ground. The Zealots have cleaned up the 9 o'clock. We've got more Zealots streaming top left. They should get stymied there top left. Is Worst going to be able to hold on to his base? He's in the red right this second. Can't produce anything. Is losing gateways. Corsairs are making their way forward, trying to deal with Overlords out in the field to put Octzerg in the red. Octzerg has a lot of Overlords all over the place, though. Some Dark Templar are being produced. They theoretically will be able to wipe out these Zerglings. The question is how much of the base gets wiped out in the meantime? And we have an attack force waiting. The Corsairs are wiping out everything they absolutely can. While all of this is happening, Octzerg has got all but... So he's 3 gateways remain. That is it. 3 gateways remain. We have a bunch of Zealots out on the ground. It looks like the Corsairs have been able to scoop things out. Octzerg now in the red, but he's got a lot of workers and a very defended base top left. Now, Worst making his way in top left is going to try to power down that gateway, but we got a flood of Zerglings back at the main and some cannons. We do have a High Templar with a Storm. Looks like the Zerglings are going to get taken care of. I don't think they have... adrenal upgrades, and that hatchery barely survives. Some High Templar trying to make their way out. Looks like they're going to get picked up Corsairs are still wiping out Overlords at the main, by the way. Octzerg down to 32 supply in the space of this. High Templar able to defend themselves. We got a drone being rebuilt here at the 9 o'clock location to sneak that base back up. Worst trying to draw some forces away. And he's got very little, so he's got a bank of 2,000, very little army. He's got 4 High Templar. Needs to find a base somewhere. Octzerg actually might, despite being at half the supply, might be in a better scenario here because he's still got that hatchery top left. He's still got minerals in the main. He's still got a little bit of minerals, sorry, at the main and natural expansion. Ultralis Cavern up, by the way. He's going to be able to rebuild this base. This does not feel worth it. Yeah, this is a bad base here from Worst. He needs to cancel that and build someplace else. This is 30. He's not going to get a return on investment from that Nexus. He needs to drop that here. Maybe just kind of, yeah, he's out of resources right now and would have to distance mine. So now dropping this base, maybe he just wants the gas. I think even then, minerals are going to be the problem more than gas right this second for him. In the meantime, Octzerg is re-expanding. The supply is very rapid. This is the thing with Zerg, with the larva mechanic, they can very quickly rebuild. Some Dark Templar flooding their way out. Not any Overlords here yet. And there's still this massive Corsair army. A couple Ultralisks out on top of everything else. That's not the unit I was expecting to be built here. And drones and that third going to get wiped out. Keep in mind that 9 o'clock base rebuilding, not a lot of saturation top left. So a lot of those drones were wiped out. Where the Ultralisks headed is the next question. Zergling's starting to tack away at that Nexus. I guess he still wants that 2,000 gas in there. Ultralisks making the way out towards the third. I still don't think there's any Overlord upgrade speed either, by the way. So Worst is going to be able to get an additional base up. He'll be 1 base, unfortunately, versus 2. Second Spore Colony up. More Overlords still getting wiped out in the midst of this. But there's a lot of Ultralisks. That's a lot of Ultralisks. Still a lot of High Templar, or sorry, a lot of Corsair making the way out. I don't know that this is enough to defend this base against all of these Ultras making the way up. And we do have Octzerg at the stage with a bit of map control. I mean, the Corsairs would see it, but he could just move all of his drones to the top left. Doesn't have an Overlord in position to work with. So theoretically, these Ultralisks could die to these Dark Templar, but the question is will it be in time? So do the Ultralisks concentrate fire on that Nexus? Dark Templar, they're not highly upgraded in the midst of this. Looks like they're going after the High Templar rather than going after the Nexus, so the Dark Templar are getting a lot of opportunity to wipe them out. Top left base being kind of spot checked. I don't know that the Corsair is going to be able to assault anything. So Worst does hold this base is down to 21 workers versus 33. The drone's now starting to get transferred. They can go to the 9 o'clock or top left. So an army of Corsair, 5 Dark Templar, and an Archon currently out for Worst. He's got his natural expansion nexus up if he wants that gas. But this is really going to be the critical base to hold. As you can see, he's down to not a lot of resources, so it's going to be High Templar for a while. Corsairs checking out that 9 o'clock base, killing Overlords that are produced there. Going to try to clear that out for the Dark Templar, so it's going to be a race to get a creep colony. It's sunken a spore up here at the 9 o'clock, and I don't think it's going to be in time, so it's probably going to be a dead 9 o'clock base. In the meantime, Octzerg, by the way, also in the red. The Ultralisks making the way there. Spore colony attempting to get built. The Ultralisks actually trying to body block for that Spore Colony, unsuccessfully so though. So Spore Colony is going to finish. There are more Ultralisks making their way up for Octzerg. Spore Colony dies as soon as it's built. And so that's going to be a dead 9 o'clock base. And in the meantime, Worst happily mining. He's been able to even up the worker count, but that top left-hand base still up and operational. So it's coming down to a detection versus raw meat game. The Ultralisks walking their way back across. There are Dark Templar to defend that interior 3 o'clock base. Working on that Archon. The Overlords, I still don't think Overlord speed is upgraded. Octzerg also in the red. Moving up, just trying to kill what workers he can. Can't Psystorm now because they're in the midst of that worker line. And the Ultralisks going to scramble back out in the meantime. Overlords do have, okay, they have Overlord speed and trying to make their way forward now. That will help against the Dark Templar. Some Archons morphing. This is going to be a tight defense. Here potentially the Corsairs making their way in. They want to try to take out those Overlords ASAP to keep these Dark Templar in the fight. Octzerg in the meantime deeper in the red, going for kind of that last side. He's down to 12 active supply, 38 supply total. Worst again, double the supply, but I'm not going to call it his game. 9 o'clock has been wiped out. The upper left is there. We have Defilers in play, kind of turning into an interesting game of whack-a-mole with Overlords versus Ultralisks and Dark Templar providing the defense underneath. Very interesting. Now I'm wondering, okay, so the next question, we do have a Nidus Canal up to top left. If Octzerg kind of snuck out, he might be able to get another base. Yeah, we already have Dark Templar spotted here for Worst. Worst needs to grab an additional base. It looks like he's going to end up losing the gas and that natural expansion at his main. Very, very exposed. I don't know if he's going to end up losing a lot of this tech at the main. 2 Dark Templar peeling off. The Corsair fleet making its way back. High Templar does have, this almost reminds me of Cat and Mouse if you've seen that UMS, where the High Templar is able to fold back underneath. And unfortunately, there's only a single Dark Templar to try to clear this out. By the way, expect a lot of this for the rest of the game. Ultralisk now down, but the Zerglings, with now the Adrenal upgrade, able to chew through a gateway and get partially through another one. 4 gateways remain. Might be enough. Worst down to 18 workers. Most of them at this base. However, it's 1 base versus 1 base. He does have the supply lead. A lot of that supply is in this Corsair army. So we'll see how it plays out from here. Defiler Darkswarm could really create a lot of interruption. Well, actually, it'll stop the cannons. It will not stop 39 kills on this Dark Templar. Holy cow. 39 kills on that Dark Templar. It's not going to stop the Archon Splash. It doesn't stop the DT Blade. It does not stop Psystorm. Also some Scourge latently out there trying to... they only have +1 Carapace though. So very easy to nab. Dark Templar even at the nearby base. So I think instead, yeah, just going to drop the Plague. Try to soften that Nexus up. A Plague on the Dark Templar would spot it. It looks like he's going to drop the Plague on the Corsair as well instead. Soften them up. Interesting play. I wonder if we're going to see some Hydralisks to try to deal with that in the meantime. More Ultralisks and Zerglings out with a single Overlord. Still very, very fragile. So these are all but 1. So we got 1 Corsair that's full health. Gonna make their way out. So Octzerg playing from a lower supply count but better map position is what I want to call it. He needs to get an Overlord to the 9 o'clock location to clear that Dark Templar. Either take this base and get it's kind of, he just needs to sneak out, grab a base, or starve Worst out, or I guess snipe that Nexus would be the other trick of it. And I think he's wanting to go for the Nexus snipe, just drop Plague on all this. Another Plague drop, that's not going to do much for him. It's just going to plague that last Corsair. Couple, looks like a Scourge managed to land on one of them. Dark Templar, and they have to have magical trades right here. Overlord gets picked off, which means the Dark Templar can go hunting again. Although the Dark Templar need to dodge Plagues. Dark Templar nearly dying to its own Psystorm. Some Zealots and High Templar a little bit exposed. Psystorm dropped, not able to get into an Archon. Expect a lot more High Templar, by the way. The 4 Zealots actually should be able to... never mind, that's +5 Carapace versus +1. So, I'm trying to... I think it's 6 Zealots beats an Ultralisk. The Ultralisk just going to go ahead and peel out, though, to preserve some health. Octzerg still mining happily, but still has not made any motions to grab anything else. He could drop here. Theoretically, he's getting, it looks like a Mutalisk and some Scourge. Wants to wipe out the Corsairs that remain to get his Overlords back out in the field. Ultralisk gonna redive on the gateway lines. Dark Templar and some Psystorm very rapidly clearing that up, but not before another gateway falls. I'm not sure that these are wins for Worst though, or sorry, for Octzerg though, because Octzerg, it's still kind of a resource efficiency battle versus resource efficiency battle here. +2 weapons, by the way, +2 armor up now for Worst. Worst huddled around this base. When it's 1 base versus 1 base, that's usually a winning scenario. Octzerg, though, has been able to sneak a massive amount of Mutalisks out. And so this Corsair army, especially with the weakened damage, I don't know that they win that fight anymore. +1 upon +1 Carapace otherwise. And that opens up, in theory, Overlords, and we still have the double Stargate, but not enough resources to rebuild. We still haven't seen any... Okay, some Overlords finally fanning out towards the 9 o'clock. What that will potentially reveal is that there's a Mutalisk force out, but that will maybe give Worst a little bit more defense. Worst up, by the way, 40 supply. Another Plague dropped on the Corsair. Once you've got the 1 Plague... was that Plague? Maybe I just was misspotting. Octzerg being very sneaky about this, but not very efficient with the resources. He's going to go ahead and, okay, he was just baiting. Trying to bait the Corsair that direction. Very clever. And able to wipe out the majority of them as a result. So now he's got that 9 o'clock open. And Worst in kind of a trouble situation where he needs to make his way. He no longer has the Dark Templar that can just walk their way out. Mutalisks also, with the lack of air, starting to impale those probes. Archons can't reach over that corner. Mules trying their best, but just don't have enough health. Oh, an Archon tripping. Oh, never mind. Not able to get through the lines, though. So that might be it, actually, for this base. An Archon able actually to sneak through, but doesn't have a lot of health left. Oh, 2 more managed to get through. And some Psystorm dropped as well. And the Mutalisks just dodging everything, expending, honestly, a lot of resources. We do have a shuttle up. Morph to Guardians in the corner. A single Corsair will take a really long time to kill all these Guardians, depending on how they're spread as well. So that could be a dead base. And that could provide trouble for this expansion. Still no drones. Okay, finally a drone making its way to the 9 o'clock. And more reinforcements making their way to try to defend a very precarious expansion. A couple Zerglings pocketing underneath. Dark Templar trying to blockade. Overlord is there. Looks like the Dark Templar was cleared out bottom left as well, so Corsair making their way out. Octzerg kind of donating some troops. And worse, is he going to go for Psystorm drops? I'm looking for a probe to go and try to open this up here on the low ground. So now it's a time game for Worst. He's still up in supply. I don't think he can attack out on the map. Zergling's just camping out there. He does have Maelstrom, which is very, very helpful against all of this. Especially just Psystorm Maelstrom is absolutely brutal for Zerg to deal with. Octzerg still doesn't grab bottom left. It makes sense that Worst is stuck to one base. Guardian's just going to hop and protect that location. Dark Swarm dropped. Again, Dark Swarm doesn't really do a lot. It's only going to negate the 2 Dragoons. Looking for the Dark Templar trying to dodge. Doesn't quite have enough. I think Maelstrom's 100. Doesn't quite have enough for a Maelstrom. But the Zerglings and everything else cleared up. Guardians moving up. They're going to get cleared up by the rest of the Corsair. Just a 5 count. Nexus getting redropped to try to get gas for Worst at the natural expansion. Is he depleted? No, he's still got Vespene gas there at the main. Some more Scourge scooting out. They're going to be able to see that shuttle drop, but not going to be able to stop it. A single Mutalisk could move in there and maybe do something, but there's still a lot of Corsair. More probes making, and this is as a base is emptied, so it's still one base versus one base here at the 9 o'clock. I'm looking for Octzerg to go ahead and grab an additional base someplace out here. He's been sitting at the supply deficit for quite some time and just utilizing effectively the massive map distances to his advantage. Scourge kind of patrolling in between here. Worst, I think it feels a little bit hesitant to drop a Nexus because it would... Okay, he's got the Corsair moving in now. I presume he's going to drop that Nexus. This is actually a big take. If he can get these Nexus up, that could be the turnaround moment. Zerglings boxing out that Zealot from the 9 o'clock. Creep colony up. Going to be a sunken colony instead of a spore colony on site. So this is Worst's army right here. He's going to be able to get another Nexus up. Octzerg's still not expanding though. I think if he grabs bottom left in any of these latent mineral only things, that could essentially be game, or even this base, that effectively would be game. But currently keeps building kind of pockets of resources and tossing them out, and just relying on the fact that Worst can't move out and attack. Is what it comes down to right this second. Building some more Scourge, and maybe doesn't feel confident in the ability to hold a lot of territory. Zerglings scooting out, looking to attack the main once again. Gonna find some Dark Templar and Zealots instead. And they got +2, +3, by the way, versus just the +1. There's +3 Carapace on those Zerglings and the Adrenal upgrade. 3 Zerglings remain. Worst doing a good job of scooting the... Well, never mind. Nice little bit of micro there by Octzerg. Nice little bit of last second micro to keep that Zealot alive. It was 2 shots away from dying. So interior base is up. Cannon is up. We have enough Corsairs to defend against Guardians and potentially Mutalisks now. We do need another shuttle to get some probe saturation down to the low ground, but there's all sorts of minerals in here now for Worst, and that is going to be protected effectively against anything but a drop. Some drones now making the way out from the main, from Octzerg. He still is just sitting on the single base, finally grabbing that extractor. Has a massive Scourge fleet. I don't think that's going to cut it now. Interesting thought, but late. Maybe wanted to catch that shuttle with a lot of workers in it. But Octzerg absolutely also limping in the resource. So finally a 9 base up. There's been multiple times where it feels like it's been at 0 both times. The other thing that's keeping Worst in kind of a different... So keep in mind, a lot of the supply is in Corsairs. So it's a little bit deceptive where it's like, okay, the ground army is actually equivalent, but the Corsair army, a little bit different. Although there's a lot of Scourge out as well. Scourge are so cheap though. Anyway, we're staking some claim. The nice thing about this Nexus is even distance mining, there's a lot of resources to work with here. What confuses me here is I feel like Octzerg still has a lot of ground control, but he hasn't taken this mineral only, he hasn't taken this mineral only, he hasn't grabbed bottom left. He hasn't grabbed what would normally be the third here as well. And that's left at 1 base versus effectively what's going to be 2. And Worst should be able to rebuild off of that and put himself in a winning situation. Octzerg may be thinking like, oh, if I can just get rid of the Corsairs, drop another Plague, rush in with a bunch of Zerglings and get some else out, that'll be it. And this has been a heroic 4 gateways. You know what would be interesting actually is if they had a count on the gateways as well. And it was like, this is how many units that this is produced. Because like that would be an epic amount of units that are produced out of these individual buildings. It's just been, usually, you know, you have the 9 gateway count once you're talking about this late of a stage of the match. But anyway, both players kind of staging up, trying to macro up a little bit. Worst should get the much more, and he's got the Maelstrom now available. Full resource mana Dark Archon here. Zealot checking to make sure that additional bases aren't out. A Zealot going to go ahead and check bottom left. And I'm wondering if Worst is as shocked as I am at this stage that additional bases haven't been grabbed. But in a situation now where he could probably leave, if he builds another Dark Templar here, I guess he doesn't even need to defend this base anymore. With the Dark Templar here and the Corsair, he could leave an Archon or 2 down there and just start marauding with the rest of his army at this stage. Should be opened up as soon as he gets the rest of those workers repositioned. The Zergling's trying to hunt down the Zealot. And I think Worst has been able to check most of these bases. And so he should know that he's in a pretty prime position. He also might be kind of in a defensive slot thinking like, oh shoot, I got to get favorable trades because Octzerg's taking a large portion of the map. Ooh, don't need a High Templar there. Could also be kind of the other thought is, because we've got the mini-map revealed, he doesn't see that these bases haven't been grabbed. Scourge and Mutals diving in. Maelstrom. Where's the Maelstrom? There's the Maelstrom. Now the Mutals just have to sit there and get completely decimated. Which is a funny word, because decimate actually means 1/10. People get like silly about that, but whatever. It's a good metaphor for being wiped out. We'll just leave it at that. Nexus at the natural expansion is going to leave 704 gas stranded right there. Still, Worst has just plush minerals at that interior 3 o'clock. And Octzerg still hasn't taken any additional base out. High Templar gets picked off, though, at the very least. Looking for those Corsair to start marauding again now. And Worst moving out, starting to move out with that army. He doesn't have to worry about this 9 o'clock between, again, that Maelstrom and everything else. He can just start, yeah. And he's got full upgrade, well, nearly full, will have full upgrades in not too long. Well, technically not full. He's not going to have the shield upgrade. He'll +3 weapons, +3 armor, which is kind of where you want to be at. Octzerg finding the resources, again, finding the, okay, he's dropped bottom left now. Finding the resources to get another Ultralisk up, but still hasn't grabbed a lot of the exterior bases. It looks like he's just getting more minerals in right this second, but still at a 40 supply deficit. Scourge scouting things out, seeing another Nexus being produced. Ooh, able to pick off Corsair and a little bit of micro. The drone's going bottom left. Looking for Worst to start making some maneuvers, because he doesn't need to protect this base anymore. He can drop that gas. Yeah, okay, now starting to make maneuvers out on the map. The question is where do you assault now? 9 o'clock has several Sunken colonies. Some drones actually going to go ahead and pre-exit. That's a very wise decision on Octzerg's part. Spotting that army mid-map. Just get out of dodge because you're not going to be able to hold. and try to saturate bottom left and get a bunch of sunken colonies down and shell up there. Dragoon's actually going to go ahead and range and do the damage at a distance. There's not a lot else to help defend against this. More Zerglings and some Ultralisks making their way across the map. They might be able to go for a dive at the gateways at the main. Some Archons are morphing in. That could be a good positional attack location. Octzerg actually making his way in to try to attack that interior 3. Sees the resources are gone. This is not going to be the great trade. Loses a lot of Zerglings, is going to lose his Ultralisks on the drawback. Might be, and gets what, 3 probes? And sub 1000 has briefly stalled a sub 1000 Vespene Geyser with 2 other geysers that are already producing underneath here. So Zerglings out in the field. Looks like they're going to try to group up the 9 o'clock. Now going for their, are they still going to go to the 9 o'clock? Okay, now they're going to start making their way up to the main, but potentially too late. The Archons are here. And Archons love a Zergling barbecue. Another plague is dropped on the Corsairs overhead, but the Dark Templar actually can filter in here. If he just repositions, yeah, just send in the Dark Templar and that should be it for this base. It looks like he's just going to go ahead and crash the rest of that army in. Doesn't need to worry about it. So 9 o'clock's now gone. Octzerg has just the bottom left to work with. I believe this counts as more than, this is basically more than 2 bases. So Octzerg now with the supply lead, with the economic lead. A couple Ultralisks and Zerglings running their way out. They might go for another shot at the main. There's a Dark Templar here, another couple Dark Templar, and that should be it. We're just going to go ahead and check here bottom left. Unfortunately, the Ultra is going again to that 3 o'clock base, which is, again, stopping a gas, but it's not a lot else for worse to lose. Maybe some supply. And so that's going to be very, very costly for Octzerg, who, again, needs just amazingly favorable trades right this second. Has got a third the supply of worst. Ooh, might be able to get some High Templar. High Templar trying to duke and dodge as best they can, dropping one, sacrificing himself for the cause with a Psystorm on death. But now Octzerg certainly is not going to be able to defend here bottom left. And has no other bases that he can really claim as his own. This is going to be, what, 6 Zerglings and maybe 4 or 5 sunken colonies by the time he gets here. And all of this bearing down. He does have a Spore, which will provide some detection against the Dark Templar, but not going to be sufficient. We got an Ultralisk and some Zerglings going for the cutoff route. But worse can go for these trades, actually. He's kind of put Octzerg in the inverse situation from a minute ago, where he could probably run out. He's careful not to Psystorm his army. Could run out and grab some additional bases, honestly, if he wanted to. He's also got all these resources down here. Just checking, finding just kind of patterning his way. Might want to go for a 2-pronged attack. Yeah, splitting that army in half. Observer sees, actually just checking out that 9 o'clock, sees the Ultralisk movement. An Archon going to get caught midfield. Should be able to turn around and attack. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know that Octzerg ever went for the drop upgrade, so doesn't have he's finally getting transportation now, so doesn't have an option to assault that 3 o'clock. So just is going to have to bear this attack. Psystorm wiping out so many drones. And everything is just melting. That's going to be game. That will be all she wrote. 7 drones left, and they're, I think 2 of them? 1 of them was in that gas. Where are the rest of the drones? We got 6 drones out in the field, not sure where. Let's try to find them. We got 3 here and 3 here, and that's it. And Octzerg cannot build another base. So what is he going to do? Distance mine at this stage? That's game. Although Ultralisk were able to clear out what was left. But it's, that's it. 1,000 resources in the bank left for worst. Octzerg just lost his last Ultralisk, although I think that was fully upgraded. No, never mind, just has the +2. And now all worst has to do is rebuild his army, and that should be it. 7 resources left. So it's this group of so we got what? Yeah, there's GG from Octzerg. Kind of a nutty one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very, very crazy match. Thank you guys for listening.